You are told, from the first moment you learn what space is, that the universe is vast because it had to be. Stars needed room to ignite, galaxies needed room to gather, and life, if it was ever going to happen at all, needed distance between one fragile island of matter and the next. That sounds reasonable, comforting even. But the more carefully you look, the more that familiar picture begins to split apart, because the universe is not merely large, it is overwhelmingly, almost offensively empty, as if something had not failed to fill it, but had deliberately cleared it out. And if you stay with that thought long enough, if you let it follow you past the obvious glow of stars and into the dark between them, you begin to sense a possibility so unsettling it feels less like a scientific conclusion and more like a warning. If a journey into that darkness is the kind of thing that stirs something in you, then stay with me and quietly subscribe to Beyond the Universe, because what waits here is not just a map of cosmic emptiness, but the reason it may exist at all. At first, the night sky offers a lie of abundance. It is crowded with points of light, dense with suggestion, alive with the feeling that reality is full. You can stand beneath that sky, lift your eyes, and believe you are looking into a kind of infinite congregation, a luminous crowd stretching away without end. But that impression belongs to the eye, not to the universe. The eye is easily deceived by clusters and highlights, by the drama of what shines and the silence of what does not. The truth is harsher. Most of what exists is not arranged into bright, welcoming patterns. Most of reality is made of distance, vacuum, cold, and the long, almost unbearable separation between islands of matter. The stars are not the rule, they are the exception, and once you understand that, the sky changes. It stops looking like a ceiling of lights and starts looking like a wound in the dark, one that only appears full because your mind cannot easily comprehend what it means for nearly everything to be nowhere near you. We live on a world where emptiness is already difficult to imagine. Even in your quietest room, the air presses against your skin. The walls define a boundary. Objects answer your presence by existing in measurable ways. But in space, the word empty becomes something else entirely. It does not mean nothingness in the philosophical sense. It means a regime of absence so complete that matter becomes rare, like a rumor surviving in a desert of silence. A single cubic meter of intergalactic space may contain only a handful of atoms, sometimes fewer. That is not a void in the casual sense of nothing there. It is a structure of near nothing so deep that particles can travel for millions of years without interruption. And what makes this worse is that this emptiness is not incidental. It is not the leftover space between the important things. It is the important thing. The universe, on its largest scales, is not built from matter filling space. It is built from space resisting matter. But it gets stranger when you begin to notice that emptiness is not distributed evenly. The cosmos is not a smooth, featureless hollowness. It has architecture, matter gathered after the Big Bang into a kind of invisible web, and along that web galaxies formed like sparks caught in frozen cracks. Between the strands lie voids, immense regions where the density of galaxies drops drastically, where light has almost nothing to reveal, where the universe seems to have opened its own mouth and swallowed the substance of itself. These voids are not tiny gaps. They are titanic cavities, sometimes hundreds of millions of light years across, so vast that entire civilizations, if they lived inside one, might mistake their loneliness for the normal condition of reality. Here, the cosmic emptiness is not a blank background. It is a geography. It has edges, contours, and transitions. It is the negative shape of structure, the shadow cast by the universe's own arrangement of matter. You might think that if the universe is mostly void, then matter must simply be scarce by accident. But the more carefully cosmologists examine the large-scale distribution of galaxies, the more it resembles a memory of a formative violence. Those filaments, clusters, and cavities are not arbitrary. They are the frozen aftermath of primordial fluctuations, tiny differences in density stretched and amplified by gravity over eons. In the early universe, the tiniest irregularities in the hot plasma became seeds. Gravity deepened them. Matter flowed toward itself. The spaces between grew emptier. The cosmos became a network of condensation surrounded by vacancy. And yet this is not merely a story about formation. It is also a story about exclusion. Every galaxy is evidence that most of the universe did not become a galaxy. Every cluster is a monument to what was left behind. The dark between things is not failure in the casual sense. It is what remains after reality selected its islands. This selection begins to feel disturbing when you realize how little of the universe can actually be touched by observation. You look out, and you do not see the whole cosmos. You see a horizon, the edge of what light has had time to reach you from since the beginning of the universe. Beyond that boundary, The universe may continue, perhaps almost unimaginably, but it is separated from you not by walls, but by time itself. The observable universe is not the universe. It is a bubble of acquaintance floating in a much larger and still mostly inaccessible dark. And this leads to something even more disturbing. If the universe is larger than what you can ever see, then the emptiness you infer from your corner of it may be only a fragment of a greater emptiness, or worse, a local illusion created by your position inside a particular cosmic arrangement. Your view of reality is not panoramic. It is trapped inside a lit room while the house around it remains uncounted. Light is supposed to be the thing that rescues us from ignorance. It reveals shape, distance, motion, composition. It turns the invisible into evidence. But in cosmology, light is also the thing that reminds you how little of reality can ever be reached. Every photon arriving from a distant galaxy is older than the civilization that might one day admire it. Every image of a nebula is a historical artifact, not a current event. The further you look, the further back you fall in time. But it gets stranger, because the light that does not arrive tells its own story. There are regions so distant that their photons will never reach us, no matter how long we wait, because the universe is not merely expanding. The expansion itself is accelerating. The horizon is not a fixed edge. It is retreating. In a very real sense, the universe is withdrawing from us as we observe it, and that withdrawal transforms emptiness into something active, almost predatory, as if the cosmos is not just spacious but evasive. You begin to realize that the darkness between galaxies is not an absence of universe. It is an expression of it. The emptiness is not empty because nothing exists there. It is empty because the rules favor distance over contact. Matter clumps, space stretches, energy thins. The grand cosmic tendency is not toward crowdedness but toward dispersion. Even the galaxies that remain gravitationally bound are islands adrift in a swelling ocean. The Milky Way and Andromeda may eventually collide, but the broader architecture surrounding them is not converging. It is opening. The farther you project into the future, the more isolated each gravitationally bound system becomes, until eventually a civilization on one galaxy may infer the existence of others, only from ancient light already fading into invisibility. That is not just spatial loneliness. It is epistemic extinction. It means that the universe can become empty of connection, even while still being full of matter. There is a deep human reflex to think of emptiness as neutral. A void is simply where things are not, but cosmology does not allow that innocence for long. The empty regions between stars are not dead in the way a broken machine is dead. They are governed by quantum fields, by residual energies, by vacuum fluctuations that suggest even nothing has a texture. This is where modern physics begins to unsettle language itself. A vacuum is not a philosophical nothingness. It is a lowest energy state with structure enough to support uncertainty, particle pairs flickering into being and vanishing too quickly to become permanent. So when we say the universe is empty, we are already speaking imprecisely. We mean that it is emptied of the familiar. We mean that the old idea of space as a container filled with stuff is wrong, and what replaces it is more disquieting. Reality is not built on solid abundance but on invisible fields, delayed signals, statistical probabilities, and absences that are still physically real. But it goes deeper than that, because even the matter we can see behaves like it is only a thin crust covering something far more pervasive. Galaxies spin too fast to hold together using visible mass alone. Clusters bend light more strongly than their luminous contents can explain. Large structures appear to be held in shape by an unseen gravitational scaffolding. Something is there, and yet it refuses direct illumination. We call it dark matter, though the name is a confession of ignorance disguised as a category. It does not emit light. It does not absorb it. It does not seem to interact the way ordinary atoms do, except through gravity, and perhaps other faint channels still being hunted. And what makes this worse is that the universe may be mostly made of things that do not participate in the world as your senses know it. The visible cosmos, stars, planets, gas, dust, the entire radiant theater of existence, may amount to only a thin minority of reality, a glowing fringe around an invisible mass that structures everything while revealing almost nothing. Imagine standing inside a cathedral and discovering that the architecture is supported by columns you cannot see. You hear the echo of the space, admire the light in the stained glass, and only gradually realize the ceiling is hanging from something unknown. That is what dark matter does to the cosmos. It is not an accessory. It is the scaffold. It shapes the web, deepens the wells into which galaxies fall, and guides the grand assembly of structure over billions of years. If it were not there, the universe would look radically different, perhaps flatter, more diffuse, less capable of forming the dense environments where stars and complex chemistry can arise. This is the terrible elegance of it. The visible world may depend on an invisible one, and the invisible one may be indifferent to whether the visible ever understands it. The universe not only hides part of itself, it may rely on that hiding. At this point, the emptiness of the universe becomes more than spatial. It becomes ontological. You are not simply surrounded by gaps. You are surrounded by dependence on unseen conditions. The ground beneath reality is not transparent. And then there is another layer, even harder to stomach, because the expansion of the universe is not slowing the way one might expect from the pull of gravity. It is accelerating. Space itself is stretching faster over time, which means distant regions are being carried away from one another by the very fabric they inhabit. Dark energy is the placeholder name we give to this behavior, and like dark matter, the phrase is less an explanation than a boundary marker placed around a mystery too large to ignore. Something is driving the acceleration, and if its value is constant or nearly so across space, then the universe is not simply expanding into emptiness. It is being pushed apart by emptiness, behaving like a property of reality itself. This is where the familiar image of the cosmos begins to fail. Expansion is not like an explosion scattering fragments into pre-existing space. It is space itself becoming more spacious, carrying galaxies with it like flecks of foam on a rising tide. But because the expansion is accelerating, the distance between unbound regions grows ever more difficult to bridge. What appears nearby now will not remain nearby forever. What seems visible now may one day vanish beyond the horizon of causal reach. The universe is not merely empty, it is becoming more empty in relation to you. The future is not a broadening of access, but a narrowing of it. And if you are the kind of mind that finds consolation in the idea that the universe is vast enough for endless discovery, then this should unsettle you. Vastness is not the same as availability. A universe can be enormous and still be closing its doors, but it gets stranger when you ask what this acceleration means for the far future of all structure. Galaxies outside gravitationally bound systems will recede so far that their light is redshifted into invisibility. The cosmic microwave background, now a faint afterglow of the early universe, will cool and stretch until its signal becomes nearly impossible to distinguish from the noise of space-time itself. Eventually, a civilization arising in such a future, if civilizations can still arise, may inhabit a cosmos where the evidence of cosmic origins has been almost completely erased from observation. No other galaxies, no accessible relic glow, no obvious signs that the universe once contained a hot, dense beginning. The emptiness would not just be physical, it would be historical amnesia built into the structure of reality. And here the imagination begins to buckle, because the universe does not merely remove things from us, it also limits how much of itself can ever be known. There is a deep, philosophical chill in the fact that the speed of light is finite, that causality has a horizon, that there are regions whose existence may be real but forever inaccessible. Knowledge is not just difficult, it is bounded by geometry. The cosmos is not a transparent totality, it is an arena with permanent blind spots. Every answer arrives inside a frame, and the frame itself hides what lies beyond it. This means our deepest maps are not complete representations, they are negotiated approximations. The universe permits us only local truth, and local truth, however elegant, can still be devastatingly incomplete. You may still be tempted to think that perhaps the emptiness is accidental, that the universe simply happened to expand this way, happened to cool this way, happened to produce a layout of matter where most of the accessible volume is nearly empty. But then fine-tuning enters the room like a shadow with intent. The basic parameters of physics, the strengths of forces, the masses of particles, the rate of expansion in the early universe, the amplitude of primordial fluctuations, sit inside narrow ranges that allow complexity to emerge. Change them too much, and stars do not live long enough, or chemistry becomes impossible, or matter never clumps into the structures that make planets and minds possible. The universe appears to occupy a precarious corridor between sterile simplicity and catastrophic collapse. That does not prove design, but it does produce an ache in the reasoning. Why should reality be balanced so delicately on a knife edge? Why should a cosmos, so largely empty, still be arranged in such a way that observers can arise to notice the emptiness? The anthropic answer is not satisfying because it explains by selection, not intention. We observe a universe compatible with our existence because incompatible universes would not contain observers. But while that resolves the question logically, It does not dissolve the feeling of eerie calibration. It leaves behind a deeper discomfort. Perhaps we are not witnesses to a universe that happened to permit life, but survivors of a cosmic lottery in which almost all possible universes are silent, barren, and structurally incapable of sustaining anything that could ask questions. The emptiness, then, is not just the absence of things, it is the statistic of failure. We inhabit the rare case, and the rarity itself can feel like a message without a sender, a universe that looks, from the inside, like it had to miss almost everything in order to permit almost nothing to become aware of itself. But it goes deeper still, because the early universe was not only hot and dense, it was also extraordinarily uniform. The cosmic microwave background reveals a young cosmos smoothed to astonishing precision, with tiny fluctuations that later became the seeds of all large-scale structure. Inflation, if it occurred, would have stretched quantum-scale irregularities to astronomical proportions, freezing randomness into the blueprint of galaxies. This means the grand architecture of the universe may have been born from microscopic chance amplified beyond comprehension. The vastness of the voids, the clustering of matter, the threads and sheets and cavities, all of it may trace back to small, almost absurd imperfections in a primordial field. Reality's largest structures were once whispers. And what makes this worse is that the universe does not merely contain randomness. It may have required just enough of it to avoid becoming featureless. A cosmos too smooth would be empty in a different way, not spacious, but sterile. Inflation is often described as a triumph of explanatory power, and it is. It solves puzzles about flatness, horizon uniformity, and the origin of perturbations, but it also reveals an unnerving plasticity in the early cosmos. Space itself may have undergone a burst of exponentially rapid expansion, amplifying not only size but the conditions for later emptiness. It scattered the seeds that became structure, but it also guaranteed unimaginable expanses between those seeds. The universe's current architecture is not simply the product of growth, it is the result of violent stretching. The voids are not passive leftovers, they are the geometry of an ancient inflationary wound. And if inflation is part of the story, then the emptiness of today may be inseparable from the dynamical extremes of yesterday. The cosmos did not drift into vacancy, it was driven there by its own origin. Now imagine the universe not as a place with things in it, but as a process that continuously chooses where things are allowed to gather. Gravity draws, expansion separates, quantum fluctuation seed, entropy spreads. Every layer of physics seems to participate in the slow creation of isolation. Stars form, burn, and die alone. Planetary systems are rare pockets of temporary order. Biological life, if it appears, must wrest coherence from an environment that statistically prefers dispersion. You begin to see that order is not the cosmos's default state. It is a temporary arrangement carved into a much larger tendency toward scattering. The silence between stars is not waiting to be filled. It is what the universe naturally becomes when left to itself. And yet, if the cosmos were only tending toward dispersed emptiness, the story would be bleak but straightforward. What makes it truly unsettling is that the emptiness is not perfectly smooth. It is punctuated by features that seem to exist only to deepen the contrast. Black holes, the darkest known objects, regions where matter and light are compressed toward horizons beyond which information becomes inaccessible. These are not voids in the ordinary sense. They are dense, gravitationally extreme negations, sinks where the visible vanishes into a boundary we cannot cross. The universe thus offers us two forms of hiddenness, the farthest distance and the most concentrated collapse. One empties by spreading things apart, the other empties by swallowing them, and both lead to the same emotional conclusion. Reality has many ways of making itself inaccessible. A black hole is not a hole in space so much as a redefinition of what space permits. Cross the event horizon, and the future narrows into inevitability. The light cannot escape. The ordinary exchange between inside and outside is severed. This makes black holes feel like cosmic prisons, but they are also laboratories of incomprehension. At their edges, general relativity and quantum theory strain against each other, and the answer to what truly happens there may require a physics not yet fully known. If singularities or quantum gravitational effects alter the classical picture, then the deepest places of collapse may hide the deepest truths about the universe's structure. But even before that mystery is solved, black holes already carry a philosophical weight. They demonstrate that the universe contains regions where reality itself becomes informationally opaque, not just dark, but conceptually sealed. What is a sealed universe made of? Not matter alone, not light alone, but boundaries. Horizons, in the cosmological sense, are among the most haunting structures in physics because they mark the limits of what can ever matter to us. The event horizon of a black hole is one such boundary. The cosmological horizon is another. Both tell you that there are regions from which no information can return. Both turn space into a hierarchy of access. Some parts of reality are here for you, others are not. And this asymmetry is what transforms physical law into existential pressure. Once you accept that the universe is layered with regions from which truth cannot emerge, the feeling of emptiness becomes more than loneliness. It becomes exclusion, but it gets stranger when you remember that exclusion can be statistical. In a universe driven toward higher entropy, low entropy pockets become increasingly rare. The early cosmos was astonishingly low in entropy given its density and temperature, which is one reason time has a direction at all. Entropy gives time its arrow, and that arrow points toward dispersion, toward thermal equilibrium, toward a future in which no gradients remain to do useful work. This is the fate commonly called heat death, but the phrase sounds too gentle for what it means. It is not the universe dying in any dramatic sense. It is the extinction of difference. No engines, no stars, no free energy, no thermodynamic leverage. A cosmos in perfect balance and therefore incapable of anything interesting. The horror of heat death is not flame or impact. It is the final victory of sameness. Still, heat death is easy to misunderstand if you imagine it as merely cold and dark. The more frightening aspect is that it is a product of the universe's own laws doing exactly what they are supposed to do. Nothing breaks, nothing rebels. The system just evolves toward the state in which no further macroscopic complexity is possible. Stars exhaust their fuel. Stellar remnants cool. Proton decay, if it occurs, erodes matter itself over absurd timescales. Black holes evaporate. Eventually, perhaps only dilute radiation and elementary particles remain, drifting in an expanding emptiness so large that interaction becomes nearly impossible. In that future, the universe is not killed by an external force. It is completed by its own thermodynamic logic. The final emptiness is not an accident. It is the endpoint built into the rules. This can feel almost insultingly impersonal. The cosmos does not hate life. It does not choose emptiness to mock us. It simply behaves in ways that make long-term complexity fragile. But that lack of intention does not make the outcome less disturbing. In some ways, it makes it worse. Random cruelty can be blamed on a mind. Blind consequence cannot. If the universe tends toward emptiness because emptiness is what stable physics permits over immense time, then the silence is not a message, and there may be no one to ask why. You are left in a reality where meaning is local, temporary, and dependent on improbable pockets of order that are always in decline. But it goes deeper than thermodynamics, because the universe's emptiness is not just something that happens over time. It is also something that may be hiding in the assumptions of physics itself. Vacuum energy, quantum fields, symmetry breaking, the cosmological constant. These are not decorative details. They are the conditions under which existence remains possible. A slight change in the vacuum state of the universe could, in some theoretical scenarios, alter the laws of physics as we know them. The vacuum is not an inert stage. It may be a field of hidden potential, a substrate capable of phase transitions so profound that empty space is only a temporary costume worn by deeper reality. That means the emptiness around you is not guaranteed to stay the same. It may be metastable. And what makes this worse is the thought that the universe could contain, somewhere in its structure, the possibility of a transition that rewrites everything instantly, or almost instantly, a bubble of altered vacuum expanding at the speed of light, erasing the old physical order without warning. That is not simple emptiness. That is fragility masquerading as permanence. The more physics advances, the less space behaves like a neutral container, and the more it resembles a living tension of fields and balances. This is where the poetic language of emptiness becomes inadequate. Empty space is not empty. It is not silent. It is not passive. It participates in the definition of particles, energies, horizons, forces, and perhaps even the overall fate of the cosmos. In this sense, the universe is not empty because it lacks depth. It is empty because depth itself is hidden in the structure of what seems like absence. The vast spaces between galaxies are not merely distances. They are expressions of a cosmology in which most of reality is invisible to direct experience. We live on the bright edge of a mostly unlit system and call that edge home. You can feel perhaps the growing vertigo of this perspective. First you thought the universe was full of stars. Then you learned it was mostly empty space. Then you learned the emptiness was organized into a cosmic web. Then you learned the web depended on unseen matter. Then you learned the expansion itself was accelerating. carrying distant regions beyond contact. Now the implication begins to crystallize. The universe is not only empty to us, it is becoming less knowable over time. The future is not an expanding archive of truth, it is a shrinking one. More and more of reality will fall outside the range of observation. More and more evidence will disappear behind horizons, and the descendants of any civilization that lasts long enough may inherit a cosmos so isolated that the grand history of everything became, from their perspective, almost impossible to reconstruct. This is one of the most haunting features of cosmology. The universe does not merely contain mysteries, it also degrades the evidence needed to solve them. The farther away something is, the older the information. The more the cosmos expands, the more that information is stretched and dimmed. The further into the future you go, the less of the past remains accessible. This means understanding is subject to decay. Knowledge itself is entropic. There may come a time when the very shape of the universe's beginning becomes invisible to any observer existing within it. And if that sounds like an abstract concern, consider what it means existentially. Reality may be structured in such a way that self-knowledge is only temporary, a brief flare of comprehension trapped inside a long process of forgetting. But it gets stranger when you contemplate how extraordinary it is that anything exists at all, instead of a total void. The question is not merely why the universe is so empty, but why there is a universe capable of emptiness. Why should there be laws, fields, fluctuations, constants, and a space-time in which separation can even be measured? Why should nothingness have failed to remain nothing? Physics can answer some versions of this, but the deepest version resists closure. If there was no time before the universe in any conventional sense, then the question of origin becomes less like a historical query and more like an inquiry into the logic of being itself. From that angle, the emptiness of the universe feels less like a cosmic accident and more like a condition that must be justified, even if no justification is forthcoming. Some thinkers reach for multiverse ideas here, imagining a vast ensemble of universes with different laws and parameters, in which our cosmos is one rare outcome among many. That possibility is intellectually provocative, but it does not so much remove the mystery as redistribute it. If many universes exist, then the question becomes why the larger generating mechanism exists, and why it produces landscapes that are so often hostile to structure. The multiverse can explain why our universe is fine-tuned by making fine-tuning a selection effect, but it also deepens the sense that reality at its root may be incomprehensibly larger than the visible cosmos, with countless regions forever beyond causal touch. The emptiness in that case is not only within the universe but between possible universes, a distance not of space but of principle. There is another unsettling possibility hidden in the mathematics of cosmology. The universe may be not only empty on large scales but asymmetrically capable of producing observers only in brief, narrow windows. Consciousness could be a transient byproduct of thermodynamic luck. Intelligence may arise only when stars, chemistry, and time align just so, and then vanish as those conditions decay. If so, then awareness is not a cosmic aim, but an exception riding a tide of dispersal. You are not standing at the center of reality. You are standing on a rare reef in a rising sea of vacancy, and the sea keeps rising. That image matters because it changes the emotional meaning of existence. Life is no longer a triumphant conquest over the void. It is a temporary patterned foam on top of a universe whose deeper tendency is towards silence. Yet there is grandeur in that too, and the grandeur is part of the horror. The same laws that ensure decay also permit structure. The same expansion that will someday isolate galaxies once allowed the universe to cool enough for atoms to form. The same entropy that promises eventual equilibrium makes time and process meaningful now. The cosmos is not malevolent in the way stories of monsters are malevolent. It is more disquieting than that. It is coherent. It follows rules so patiently that their consequences unfold over scales the mind can barely hold. What terrifies us is not chaos, but the fact that order can be temporary without being false. Meaning can be real and still vanish. Beauty can be genuine and still be statistically doomed. So when you look up at the sky after understanding any of this, you do not see the same thing anymore. The stars remain beautiful, but their beauty becomes precarious. Each one burns by consuming itself. Each galaxy hangs in a web of invisible mass. Each void reminds you that most of the universe is not lit for your benefit. Each horizon tells you that there are truths forever slipping away. Even the word universe begins to feel inadequate, because it implies a totality that can be imagined as one thing. But what you inhabit is less like a single object and more like a layered exclusion zone around a small island of order. You do not live in a full cosmos. You live in a permitted pocket, and that permission may be temporary. On the longest timescales, even the conditions that allow atoms, stars, and chemistry may erode or transform. If protons decay, then matter itself is not final. If black holes evaporate, then even the most extreme concentrations of gravity fade into radiation. If dark energy remains dominant, then expansion continues, thinning contact between regions. If vacuum stability is not absolute, then a deeper phase of reality may someday replace the one we know. Every option points toward impermanence. Every layer of the universe carries a built-in expiration. This is not merely a place that contains death. It is a place organized around the eventual disappearance of the structures that make life legible. But it goes deeper, because once you accept cosmic impermanence, you are forced to confront a stranger idea. Perhaps emptiness is not the opposite of existence, but one of its recurring forms. Perhaps the universe cycles through states of abundance and vacancy, structure and dilution, not as a failure to stay full, but as part of a much larger rhythm beyond human scale. Some speculative models imagine cosmic rebirth, quantum nucleation, bounce cosmologies, or eternally inflating backgrounds that spawn pocket universes like bubbles rising in a dark sea. These are not established certainties, but they remind us that what looks final from inside a universe may be only local. Still, even those possibilities do not restore comfort. They replace one abyss with another. If our cosmos is only one bubble in a larger process, then the emptiness is even more profound, because it is no longer just a property of our universe. It is part of the machinery that generates universes at all. In that light, the question, why is the universe empty, becomes almost unbearable, because every answer seems to open onto a larger silence. It is empty because expansion stretches matter. Why expansion? Because of the initial conditions. Why those conditions? Because of inflation or something like it. Why inflation? Because of deeper physics. Why that physics? Because perhaps reality at its root favors forms of being that are sparse, temporary, and difficult to preserve. At some point, explanation stops and pattern remains. And pattern, when sufficiently deep, can feel like destiny. The universe may not be empty by chance. It may be empty because the most stable way for a cosmos to exist is to spend most of its existence mostly unoccupied, with matter and mind appearing only as rare localized events within a much larger silence. You can think of this as a cosmic economy of scarcity. Energy condenses briefly into stars. Stars create heavy elements. Heavy elements allow chemistry. Chemistry allows life. Life allows reflection. Reflection allows the universe to become aware of its own emptiness, but only locally, only briefly, only inside an unstable pocket of low entropy. Then the pocket closes. This sequence is not optimistic or pessimistic in any simple sense. It is simply the shape of things. And that shape is haunting because it suggests that consciousness may be a byproduct of a universe that otherwise has no need for witnesses. We are not the purpose of the void. We are the event that occurs despite it. But it gets stranger when you consider the emotional consequence of all this. If the universe were crowded, if stars were everywhere, if contact were easy and horizons did not retreat, perhaps the human sense of isolation would be less severe. But the actual cosmos teaches distance as a fundamental condition. It teaches that everything meaningful may be separated by unimaginable stretches of nothing. That lesson seeps into philosophy, into theology, into the architecture of longing itself. Even our metaphors of loneliness borrow from the sky because the sky already contains the shape of our estrangement. The universe is empty not merely in a numerical sense, but in a symbolic one. It rehearses solitude at every scale. And still, science keeps going, which is perhaps the strangest part of all. It keeps revealing that the emptiness is active, structured, and law-bound. It keeps showing us that the invisible exceeds the visible by orders of magnitude. It keeps forcing us to admit that what we call reality is often shorthand for the narrow slice our instruments can sample from an ocean too large to perceive directly. Every new measurement refines the map, but the map remains smaller than the territory. Every answer widens the edges of the unknown. This is the peculiar dignity and terror of cosmology. It does not end uncertainty. It gives uncertainty a shape. So here, in the widening dark, the universe becomes less like a home and more like a revelation you were never meant to finish hearing. The galaxies are not the main story. The main story is the space around them, the forces that separate them, the horizons that hide them, and the eventual silence that awaits their light. The cosmos is not empty because nothing matters. It is empty because matter is rare, fleeting, and expensive in the language of physics. And maybe that rarity is the whole point. Maybe a universe capable of producing thought must also be a universe that mostly withholds itself, because a fully revealed cosmos would leave no room for wonder, no room for discovery, and no room for the fragile beings who need distance in order to look. But what if the distance is not a gift? What if it is a mechanism? What if the emptiness is not there to make wonder possible, but because wonder is only a side effect of a universe that cannot afford to remain crowded, permanent, or fully accessible? That question does not have to be answered to disturb you. It only has to be felt. Once felt, it changes the night sky forever. The stars are no longer ornaments. They are temporary pressure points in a vast architecture of absence. The voids are no longer gaps. They are the dominant terrain. And the future is no longer open-ended in the way we like to imagine. It is a narrowing corridor leading toward a colder, lonelier, and perhaps less knowable cosmos. If there is comfort left, it is only this. To understand the emptiness is to resist it, if only for a moment. To name the void is to light a small fire inside it. To follow the science is to stand at the edge of the abyss with eyes open, refusing to look away. And maybe that is all consciousness has ever been. Not a triumph over the dark, but a brief and extraordinary flare of awareness inside a universe that is mostly dark for reasons we are only beginning to grasp. But even that fragile flame matters, because it means the cosmos is not empty of meaning merely because it is empty of matter. You are here, and you can know that it is empty, and in knowing it, you have become one of the rare things the universe seems capable of producing. That realization should comfort you. It should also frighten you. Because if the universe can make a mind that sees its own isolation, then the emptiness was never truly silent. It was waiting to be noticed. And once you notice it, you cannot unsee the scale of what surrounds you. The dark between stars becomes a presence. The regions beyond the horizon become a silence with boundaries. The invisible mass shaping galaxies becomes the hidden hand beneath the visible world. The accelerating expansion becomes a slow cosmic retreat. The entropy of the future becomes a law of thinning. A promise that everything structured will eventually be unstructured. The universe is not empty in the simple sense of being vacant. It is empty the way an abandoned cathedral is empty, still immense, still shaped by intention or history, still full of the echo of what once moved through it, and perhaps still waiting for some final visitor to understand why it was left this way. But there is one last unease buried beneath all the rest. If emptiness is the natural condition of most of reality, then existence itself may be the anomaly. Matter, stars, life, thought, these may be rare arrangements temporarily holding back a much larger tendency toward dispersion and silence. The universe does not need to be full in order to be real. It needs only to follow its laws. And those laws, as far as we can tell, do not privilege fullness. They permit islands. They permit intervals. They permit vanishing. They permit the long, cold architecture of the void. That is why the universe feels so terrifying when you stare long enough. Not because it is hostile, but because it is indifferent in a way that can support everything we are, and then erase it without breaking a rule. So the next time you look up into the dark, do not think first of stars. Think of the distance between them. Think of the empty volumes where light wanders alone. Think of the unseen mass bending galaxies into shape. Think of the horizon where knowledge ends. Think of the future in which even distant galaxies vanish from sight. Think of a cosmos that seems to require emptiness as its prevailing condition, not its error. And if that thought sends a chill through you, good. It means you are still awake to the scale of the mystery. It means the universe has not yet hidden itself completely. It means there is still time to stand here, inside a rare pocket of order, and feel the terrible grandeur of being conscious in a cosmos that is mostly dark. Because that is the final truth pressing in from every direction. The universe is empty, not despite its laws, but because of them. And that emptiness is not a blank. It is a fate. It is a structure. It is a history. It is a future. It is the shape of reality when distance wins, when entropy spreads, when horizons close, and when the bright islands of matter are left drifting in a widening sea of almost nothing. That sea is not dead. It is not harmless. It is the environment in which everything else is briefly permitted to exist. And if you listen carefully, beneath the science, beneath the poetry, beneath the awe, you may hear the quietest and most unnerving implication of all. The universe may be empty, because emptiness is what remains after reality has finished making room for us. And once that thought takes hold, it does not leave politely. It settles into the mind the way cold settles into stone, slow and absolute, until even familiar things begin to look slightly unreal. A room is no longer just a room. A lamp, a wall, a ceiling, all of it becomes an intricate exception inside a universe that would, on every large scale, prefer not to be crowded with anything at all. You start to sense that the comfort of proximity is local, temporary, and almost defiant. The molecules beneath your hand are not proof that reality is solid in the way you once believed. They are proof that, for a while, the universe permits structure to persist against the grain of its own vast, thinning architecture, and that permission can be revoked by time itself, which is perhaps the most chilling thing of all. It is easy to think of time as a river carrying everything forward, but in cosmology, time often feels more like erosion. It wears down the edges of order. It removes possibilities one by one. Each second does not simply add to the sum of existence, it also narrows the range of what can still happen. The cosmos is not just expanding outward, it is aging inward, becoming less capable of surprise in the thermodynamic sense. The early universe was a furnace of unrealized outcomes, a hot blur of density and potential. What we inhabit now is a much cooler chapter, one with galaxies, stars, and chemistry, but also one already moving toward depletion. The emptiness ahead is not an accident waiting in the distance. It is the direction in which the story has been leaning since the beginning. But it gets stranger when you remember that the beginning itself may have been a kind of controlled emptiness. Inflation in some models did not emerge from fullness in the ordinary sense. It emerged from a high-energy vacuum state, something that was not nothing, but also not matter, not stars, not familiar substance. The universe may have begun in a condition where space itself possessed a stored instability, a latent tension that could suddenly release into exponential growth. That means the first great act of cosmic becoming may have been rooted in a vacuum capable of changing phase, as though reality was never a fixed foundation, but a field with hidden thresholds. The primordial universe, then, was not a nursery of things. It was a precarious state in which the absence of form still contained the power to generate all later form. That is not comforting. It means the road from nothingness to galaxies may have passed through an invisible instability we still only partially understand. You can imagine that early epoch as a silence stretching under impossible pressure. There were no stars yet, no planets, no observers, no night sky to admire. There was only the evolution of fields, the emergence of structure from quantum fluctuations, the gradual cooling that allowed protons and electrons to settle into atoms. And even there, the universe was choosing emptiness over fullness in a sense, because only a tiny fraction of the available energy became the matter that now surrounds us. The rest persisted in forms more elusive: radiation, vacuum energy, hidden components, expansion itself. The visible universe is not the total budget of existence. It is the ledger line we can read. Behind it lies an accounting so strange that every known thing appears almost like an afterthought. This does not make matter less real. It makes it more astonishing. Every atom is a hard-won event in a cosmos that did not have to become legible in this way. Every element heavier than helium is a product of stellar furnaces, supernovae, collisions, cataclysms, and ancient cycles of death and recycling. You are made of ashes that were once inside stars, yes, but that phrase has become so familiar it risks dulling the horror hidden inside it. Your body is the temporary arrangement of matter that the universe assembled by spending enormous time and energy just to produce complexity that can feel the emptiness around it. In other words, life is not proof that the cosmos is full. It is proof that rare configurations can arise in a mostly empty system and briefly make that emptiness aware of itself. And the awareness is fragile. On the surface, human consciousness feels intimate, immediate, undeniable. Yet it depends on astronomically improbable preconditions: stable stars, a planet with liquid water, a magnetic field, plate tectonics, a protected atmosphere, chemistry tuned for complexity, and a cosmic environment calm enough to avoid sterilizing disruptions for billions of years. Each of those conditions is a narrow bridge over ruin. Pull one plank, and the bridge collapses. This is why the emptiness of the universe feels so personally threatening once you understand it. It is not just that the cosmos is huge and empty. It is that your existence is a slender rebuttal to that emptiness, and the rebuttal itself is temporary. The universe did not construct you from abundance. It built you from scarcity arranged into form. But it goes deeper, because even the notion of form is unstable at cosmic scales. Galaxies are not fixed sculptures. They evolve, merge, rotate, and dissolve into broader structures. Stars are born from clouds that were once diffuse. Planets are assembled from debris that once circled dying suns. Black holes grow by consuming matter and then, over unimaginable durations, fade. The universe is not preserving objects. It is running them through states. What looks solid from one perspective is merely a stage in a long chemical and gravitational choreography. The emptiness around objects is not just background, it is the medium through which transformation happens. Without distance, without vacuum, without the ability of things to separate and recombine, there would be no cosmic history at all. The void is the theater of change. That might sound almost serene, until you realize what theater implies. Actors appear, perform, and leave. The stage remains. Yet in the cosmic version, even the stage is changing. Space itself stretches. The actors drift apart. The lighting fades. The architecture ages, and there is no audience outside the system to restore it. This turns the universe into something deeply uncanny. A self-contained performance without an external witness. One that may end not with a crash but with a gradual loss of coherence, until even the memory of performance can no longer be sustained. In the far future, if information is stretched beyond practical recovery and matter becomes too thin to support complexity, then the story of the universe may continue physically while becoming emotionally unreadable. It will still exist, but not as a place that can be known in any meaningful sense. That possibility should matter to you because it reveals something profound about the relationship between emptiness and knowledge. We often imagine knowledge as a light that removes darkness, but in a universe governed by horizons and entropy, knowledge is more like a fragile pattern that the dark eventually erases. The universe permits understanding, then slowly reduces the conditions under which understanding can survive. This is not sabotage, it is the natural consequence of expansion and thermodynamics. Yet the effect is tragic. Every telescope is a race against loss. Every map of the cosmos is a temporary victory over forgetting. Every theory is built inside a narrowing window. The emptiness is patient. And if you follow that patience far enough, you arrive at a thought that is almost too strange to hold comfortably. Perhaps the universe's emptiness is not a void waiting to be filled, but a baseline from which islands of structure intermittently emerge and then vanish. In that case, the question, why is there something rather than nothing, becomes entangled with, why do islands form in a sea that does not keep them? The answer may lie in quantum field behavior, symmetry breaking, and cosmic evolution, but the emotional core remains difficult to escape. Existence is not the default, it is the interruption. We are living inside the interruption, trying to name the sea around it, while the sea slowly resumes its dominance. There is terror in that, but also a kind of dark elegance. The universe is not empty because it is lazy. It is empty because emptiness is stable over immense scales, and stability is what a cosmos naturally drifts toward when left to obey its deepest rules. Matter, in comparison, is high maintenance. It requires finely tuned processes to form, persist, and multiply into complexity. Gravity must gather, cooling must occur, nuclear fusion must ignite, chemistry must organize. Life must exploit gradients in a system that is always trying to erase them. You begin to see that the cosmos does not owe us hospitable conditions. We are products of a long exception, and exceptions, by definition, are fragile. They can be statistically rare and still feel locally inevitable because you are standing inside one. That is the trap of perspective. From here, the universe seems structured for familiarity, because familiarity is the only environment that can produce an observer. But remove the observer, and the cosmic picture changes immediately. Vast regions become empty not because they lack significance, but because significance is not evenly distributed. It gathers where conditions allow it, and vanishes where they do not. This makes the universe feel less like a finished object and more like an uneven field of allowed and disallowed complexity. The emptiness is not a side note, it is the rule. Structure is the exception that proves it. But it gets stranger when you consider how modern cosmology has turned empty space into one of the most active concepts in physics. The vacuum is not inert. It may contribute to the universe's acceleration. It may support virtual processes. It may hide symmetry properties that break under certain conditions. It may even hold the key to why the cosmological constant has the value it does. We keep discovering that absence is not absence. It is a medium of hidden activity. This should feel reassuring because it means the void is not truly dead, but instead it should disturb you, because if even emptiness has dynamics, then nowhere is simple. There is no final refuge in a blank. Even the blank is doing something. That realization can change how you think about solitude. Human beings often imagine isolation as being cut off from things, but on a cosmic scale, isolation is built into the architecture of reality. The stars are far apart not by convention but by consequence. Interstellar distances are not empty corridors between inhabited places. They are the native condition. We live on an island of chemistry within a desert of vacuum, on a world bathed in a light that came from unimaginably distant furnaces, while most of the universe remains unvisited by any mind. If you ever feel small under the sky, that feeling is not an emotional exaggeration. It is an accurate response to scale. Yet smallness by itself is not the terrifying part. The terrors come from implication. If the universe is so vast and so empty, then any intelligence that emerges within it is both precious and threatened. Precious, because it is rare. Threatened, because the environment that permitted it may not endure. The future promises more isolation, more thinning, more entropy, more inaccessible distances. Even if civilizations become interstellar, even if they spread across worlds and stars, they will still be limited by the rules of expansion and the fading of accessible structure. At some point, the cosmos stops offering new horizons and begins to remove old ones. That is not just a scientific forecast. It is a metaphysical chilling of the room. Some nights, perhaps, you think of this and feel the ordinary world around you flicker into unreality. The clock on the wall seems too small to contain the ages. Your hands seem almost comically local. The floor beneath you seems like a thin, temporary negotiation between matter and gravity. And above it all, the dark outside the window is no longer just darkness. It is the nearest expression of a universal condition, the local version of an almost complete absence. We tend to call the universe empty because we compare it to our crowded daily life. But the more honest phrasing might be that our daily life is densely arranged emptiness, brief and luminous, standing inside a far larger emptiness that needs no permission from us. That larger emptiness will continue after we are gone. It will not mourn. It will not remember. It will simply unfold according to the same laws that let stars shine and galaxies cluster and minds arise long enough to wonder about their own extinction. This is where the emotional arc of cosmology becomes truly severe, because it gives you a universe that is both deeply beautiful and fundamentally unconcerned. The beauty is real. The concern is not. The night sky can move you to tears, but it does not know that it does. The void can inspire awe, but it is not listening. And yet the fact that we can feel awe in the face of such indifference may be the most astonishing thing we know. We are in effect a form of matter that has become sensitive to its own insignificance, but it goes deeper still, because sensitivity itself may be one of the universe's rarest achievements. A cloud of gas does not care about the stars it may become. A star does not grieve the planets it can no longer warm. A galaxy does not contemplate the voids between its filaments. Only in a small range of conditions does the cosmos produce systems that can evaluate their own place in it. You are not merely an observer. You are an event in which the universe reflects on its own emptiness. That is why the emptiness is terrifying. It is not just outside you. It is now inside your understanding. Once the universe becomes something you can conceptually hold, you also become unable to forget how much of it is beyond holding. The question then becomes not whether the universe is empty, but whether emptiness is the truest face of reality when no one is looking. If so, then every star is a temporary illumination of a much broader dark. Every structure is a local rebellion against dispersion. Every mind is a flicker of pattern in a thermodynamic ocean. And every scientific discovery does something paradoxical. It expands knowledge while shrinking the portion of the cosmos that feels hospitable to intuition. This is why cosmology can feel like an encounter with a vast intelligence that does not speak, but instead arranges matter and time in forms that eventually point back to the silence around them. You may wonder whether this is all too bleak, too weighty, too relentlessly shadowed, but the universe does not care whether its truth comforts us. The truth, if it is worthy of the name, must be allowed to stand even when it chills the blood. And the truth here is that emptiness is not a defect in the cosmos. It is the dominant medium through which everything else becomes possible. It is the canvas, the interval, the distance, the delay, the isolation, the horizon, the future, and the fate. It is where galaxies drift, where light travels, where gravity sculpts, where entropy wins slowly, and where our brief existence burns with impossible intensity, precisely because it is surrounded by so much that is not like us. So when you close your eyes and picture the universe, do not picture a glittering field of stars. Picture the far larger dark, in which those stars are suspended like sparks above a bottomless abyss. Picture the web of matter strung across millions of light years. with voids like hidden oceans between its threads. Picture the retreating horizons, the inaccessible regions, the unseeable future, the thinning of contact, the eventual quiet. Picture a reality that is not empty by mistake, but empty by structure, by law, by history, by consequence. And in that picture, let yourself feel both the awe and the dread, because both are honest. The cosmos is magnificent. It is also lonely in a way no human language can fully soften. That loneliness is the final gift of the universe's emptiness. It forces perspective. It strips away the fantasy that we inhabit a crowded, familiar, forever accessible totality. It reveals instead a place where existence is rare, knowledge is local, and the future leans towards silence. If that knowledge frightens you, it should. It is frightening, but it is also clarifying. The universe is not empty because nothing matters. It is empty because matter, meaning, and mind are precious exceptions in a system whose deeper grammar is absence. And the terrifying part is not that the universe will one day be empty. It is that, in a sense so large it borders on metaphysics, it already is. This realization challenges your most basic sense of belonging. You have always imagined the cosmos as a vast home, a place to explore, a realm in which distance could be conquered, horizons eventually crossed, and mysteries unveiled forever. But the universe does not behave like a home. It behaves like a one-way journey toward vast isolation. The stars are retreating. The lights are dimming. The map of what can ever be known shrinks even as it unfolds. The emptiness is not a backdrop. It is a dynamic, shaping presence. It is a horizon that recedes faster than you can outpace, a silence that grows louder as all matter disperses. And recognizing this feels less like arriving at knowledge and more like descending into an existential abyss. You might ask, why should this cosmic emptiness matter to a single consciousness, to a single life? Why fixate on the silence beyond when there is so much to observe and understand within the living world? But the cosmos insists on priority. The emptiness defines the parameters of existence. It constrains the possible. It determines what can persist and what must dissolve. It creates the conditions for everything that is to appear, then quietly withdraws as the universe moves forward. Knowing the cosmos is empty is not abstract or irrelevant. It is the shadow under every thriving leaf, the darkness behind every ray of light, the inevitable horizon toward which all things must travel. But it gets stranger still when you consider that the emptiness itself might not be uniform across time and space. What we perceive today as voids and darkness might be just the surface of more complex structures we do not yet understand. The quantum vacuum may be a froth of virtual particles, bubbling with spontaneous creation and annihilation. Invisible forces, dark energy, dark matter, could be textures in a deeper cosmic weave. There might be dimensions beyond what we see, horizons that bend into unknown geometric realms, and fields that govern reality beneath the thin skin of apparent emptiness. Our ignorance is not just gap-filled, it is an abyss, a negative space filled with the echoed possibility that the universe may not be empty for lack of content, but because it conceals something vast beyond current comprehension. This leads to a deeper, more disturbing reflection. What if the emptiness is not neutral matter but an active presence, a force that shapes what can exist by limiting connections, by driving expansion, by enforcing isolation? What if the vacuum is not simply a passive stage but an agent of cosmic fate, determining the cadence of stars, the formation of galaxies, the possibility of life? If space itself carries such agency, then emptiness is no longer just something to endure or to explore. It becomes a presence with will, or at least a pressure, a shape, a dynamic that pressures existence toward a particular destiny. The thought that you live inside an indifferent architecture is existentially destabilizing. More so is the possibility that even indifference is an active sculptor. You feel the improbable nature of your own awareness echoing against this backdrop. Life on Earth is a fragile island amid an ocean that thirsts for entropy. Your mind is a brief flash of order capable of glimpsing the ceaseless retreat of reality into distance and silence. You think about all the progress science has made, of all the vast surveys of galaxies, all the equations that describe cosmic expansion, all the theories that seek to grasp the alien fabric of dark matter and dark energy. And you wonder, does knowledge itself change the emptiness? Does understanding grant passage beyond horizons? Or does it merely illuminate the limits of passage? Is insight a light that pushes back shadows? Or is it the recognition that the shadows have always been there, framing everything you seek? The answer is neither fully consoling nor entirely despairing. It is nuanced. The pursuit of knowledge is itself a form of rebellion against the emptiness, It is a persistent, collective act of illumination, a way to claim presence inside a cosmos that would otherwise seem forbidding and indifferent, and yet that illumination is never complete. Every discovery raises deeper questions. Every horizon reached reveals another beyond. The universe grants knowledge gingerly and always within limits. You begin to see that the emptiness is both veil and revelation. It is the venue in which meaning can arise, even as it signals the ultimate fragility and impermanence of that meaning. And so you carry this knowledge like a secret burden. You understand the universe's emptiness is vast, structured, and generative of both beauty and dread. You realize that the void is the condition from which all things arise, and to which all things ultimately return. You glimpse that you are a transient pattern of information, a flicker of consciousness capable of reflecting on cosmic distances and time so immense they defy intuition. And in that reflection lies a paradox. Knowing the emptiness does not leave you outside of it. You are entwined, a momentary node of order inside a system tilting inevitably toward isolation. In the end, the universe's emptiness may be its most profound message. It tells you that existence is fragile, that presence is rare, that connection is temporary. The expanding cosmic voids, the unseeable horizons, the invisible scaffolding of dark matter, and the accelerating retreat of distant galaxies all speak of a cosmos that is both magnificent and alien in its hostility to permanence. Your life, your mind, your very being are unexpected islands in this much larger sea of absence. And the emptiness is not a failure of the universe, but its expression, its course, its architecture, and perhaps even its purpose. If purpose is a word you can afford to use. The stars may burn out, the galaxies may fade beyond reach, the light that carries their stories may grow cold and sparse. But for now, in this brief window of cosmic time, you exist to bear witness. And that act of witnessing is not a small thing. It is a rebellion against silence, a declaration that meaning, however fragile and temporary, is possible inside a universe that would rather not give it. The void waits. You look back at it, unflinching. And in that stare, you make your place beyond the universe's emptiness yet again. If this journey through cosmic emptiness has touched something raw within you, forged awe and unease, expanded understanding while deepening mystery, then stay here with us, beyond the universe. Let these reflections accompany you as you continue to gaze into the dark, to seek light in the void, and to find your own fragile meaning woven among the stars and the shadows that enfold them. And even after all of that, even after the logic has unfolded, and the scale has broken intuition and the future has revealed its cold arithmetic, there remains a final discomfort that does not dissolve just because it has been named. It sits behind the ribs like a second heartbeat. If the universe is this empty, then why does it feel so carefully arranged to make that emptiness invisible at first glance? Why do stars exist at all, if only as tiny islands in a sea that overwhelmingly is not made for them? Why is there enough structure to let matter gather, but not enough to let it gather everywhere? Why is the cosmos capable of producing minds that can measure its vacancy, if vacancy is the dominant condition? Questions like these do not demand a simple answer because they are not simple questions. They are the kind that open a corridor in the mind and then stand at the far end, silent, as if they know you will eventually follow. The temptation is to think in terms of purpose. Human beings do this almost automatically. We look for reasons, intentions, designs, narratives that make the shape of reality feel less arbitrary. But cosmology resists that reflex in unsettling ways. The universe does not appear to be built around comfort. It appears to be built around lawful unfolding. And lawful unfolding does not require meaning in the human sense. It requires only consistency. Expansion behaves as it does. Gravity behaves as it does. Entropy behaves as it does. Fields fluctuate. Structures emerge. Horizons form. From those rules, the long story of emptiness follows almost naturally. If there is intention here, it is hidden so completely that it is indistinguishable from mechanism. If there is no intention, the effect is almost the same. A cosmos that permits life briefly and then lets silence reclaim the stage. But it gets stranger when you examine what silence actually means on cosmic scales. Silence is not the absence of sound in the way we know it. Space is mostly a vacuum, and sound cannot travel through it as it does through air. But that does not mean the universe is mute in every sense. There are vibrations in plasma, distortions in space-time, ripples in gravitational fields, and ancient afterglows converted into data. The cosmos speaks in frequencies, in redshifts, in lensing patterns, in the subtle torque of unseen mass. So when we speak of cosmic silence, we mean something more terrifying than literal quiet. We mean a lack of reply. The universe emits signals, but not answers. It reveals processes, but not reassurance. It is loud with evidence and silent on significance. That distinction matters because it changes how you should think about emptiness. It is not merely the absence of content, it is the presence of distance without reciprocity. A galaxy may send its light for billions of years, yet no one there will ever know whether it was seen. A supernova may flare with the power of 100 billion suns, yet its brilliance can pass through an expanding void and vanish into the deep future without witness. The cosmos is full of events that happen and then dissolve into irrecoverable history, and perhaps that is why emptiness feels so severe, not because nothing occurs, but because occurrence is so often severed from permanence. The universe allows events to exist and then forgets them. You begin to feel that memory itself is cosmic resistance. To remember is to preserve structure against entropy, if only locally and briefly. Civilizations build archives. Minds build stories. Telescopes store light in detectors. Physics accumulates patterns into theory. All of these are attempts to hold the shape of reality still long enough to understand it. But the universe keeps moving. Galaxies drift. Radiation cools. Black holes evaporate. The information that once seemed secure becomes harder to retrieve. In the largest possible sense, the cosmos may be a machine for converting structure into dispersion. Meaning, then, is not a stable property. It is a maintained condition, constantly paid for in energy and attention. And it goes deeper because even our thought patterns may be shaped by the same asymmetry. We are not neutral observers looking at emptiness from nowhere. We are products of a universe that favored local complexity over uniform nothingness. Our brains are built to detect structure, to infer presence, to imagine cause, to map distance, to fear absence. Perhaps that is why cosmic emptiness is so disturbing. It violates the deepest expectations of an organism tuned for nearby survival. We are small creatures evolved on a single world, yet capable of contemplating the retreat of galaxies and the heat death of all things. That mismatch between scale and cognition is itself astonishing. The universe gave rise to minds that can think beyond their own niche, and in doing so, those minds discover just how unwelcoming the larger reality can be. But this mismatch is also a source of wonder. There is something almost impossible in the fact that a biological network of cells can understand the expansion of space-time, the role of vacuum fluctuations, the distribution of matter on scales too vast to imagine. The same species that once looked at the night sky and saw divine signs now looks and sees physics, and the physics is somehow stranger and more haunting than the old myths. Not because it lacks grandeur, but because it grounds grandeur in impersonal laws. The old heavens were full of intention. The modern cosmos is full of processes, yet processes can be more chilling than gods, because they do not need to notice you in order to change your future. But it gets stranger still when you consider the possibility that our current understanding may only describe a fraction of the true cosmic order. Dark matter remains unidentified. Dark energy remains mysterious. Quantum gravity is incomplete. The origin of the universe may involve physics beyond our most successful models. The apparent emptiness could conceal layers of structure not merely invisible, but conceptually inaccessible from inside our universe. If that is true, then the darkness is not just dark, it is veiled. And a veil is more unsettling than an empty room because it suggests that something is there, watching from behind a boundary you cannot breach. Of course, science does not permit fear to replace evidence. It demands discipline. It refuses to turn mystery into mythology without cause. That is why cosmology is so powerful. It lets the unknown remain unknown without making it feel trivial. The discipline of not knowing is part of the truth. You cannot rush the universe into confession. You can only keep measuring, refining, comparing, and revising. But that patience has its own emotional cost. The more the universe reveals, the clearer it becomes that our most familiar intuitions are tuned to a local, forgiving scale. Beyond it, reality stops being intuitive and starts being exacting. Emptiness is one of the first things to become exacting because it exposes the poverty of our everyday metaphors. We say empty because we need a word, but the cosmos does not care what word we use. To the universe, the vacuum is a state with measurable properties, and the regions between matter are governed by as much law as the matter itself. The void is not accidental, it is integral. It defines pressure, expansion, interaction, and the possible evolution of structure. In that sense, the universe is not empty in spite of its complexity. Its complexity exists through emptiness. It is a choreography of things emerging from places where things are almost not. That is a deeply unsettling inversion. The ground of abundance is not abundance but absence. Once you see that, every spatial scale begins to feel haunted. A room feels like a miniature of cosmic logic. The air between your fingers feels like a local version of the intervening vastness between stars. The distance from Earth to the Sun, from one galaxy to another, from one observable horizon to the next, all of it becomes more than measurement. It becomes a lesson in how reality is organized by separation. The universe is not a dense field with occasional breaks. It is a sparse field with occasional densities, and the densities are the things we notice because they keep the dark from becoming total. But then comes the unnerving recognition that total darkness may not be a single event. It may arrive in stages. First, the nearby stars remain. Then distant galaxies fade. Then only gravitationally bound systems stay visible. Then even those age into dimmer states. Then the remnants cool. The black holes slowly evaporate, and the horizon beyond which any meaningful activity can occur becomes so thin that the cosmos can no longer sustain memory as we know it. This is not a cinematic apocalypse. It is more insidious. It is the gradual and lawful subtraction of relevance. A universe can become empty, not by losing everything at once, but by rendering everything ever less connected to everything else. And that is perhaps the deepest terror of all, not destruction, but disconnection. Many imagined ends are dramatic because they preserve relation. A catastrophe still links cause and effect in a visible instant. The cosmic end is different. It unthreads relation until nothing has enough energy, proximity, or coherence to touch anything else meaningfully. The universe becomes a place where events happen, but fewer and fewer of them can matter beyond their immediate location. When that stage is reached, the universe is not violently dead. It is profoundly alone. If you let that sink in, you may begin to see why emptiness in cosmology is never merely a negative quantity. It is a metaphysical pressure. It tells us that reality favors local flames over global permanence. It tells us that existence is something the universe can produce, but not keep forever in the forms we love. It tells us that the conditions for thought, warmth, memory, and language are all temporary alignments in a much larger framework that does not preserve alignments unless they are constantly paid for. In that sense, your very awareness of the cosmos is a form of borrowed time made conscious. Yet borrowed time is still time. And time, while it erodes, also allows experience. It allows you to look into a telescope and see ancient light. It allows you to reconstruct the birth of structure from tiny fluctuations. It allows you to build theories from evidence scattered across billions of years. It allows you to stand on a world that was once molten, under a sky that was once starless, in a universe that was once too hot for atoms, and ask how all of this came to be. That question itself is one of the strangest products of cosmic emptiness. The void does not silence inquiry. It provokes it. The lack of everything gives rise to a species that cannot stop asking why there is something. But it gets stranger when you realize that our very language might be too small for the answer. Every term we use, void, vacuum, horizon, dark, emptiness, isolation, borrows from human experience and stretches beyond its natural limits. The universe may be nothing like the emptiness we imagine in a sealed room or an abandoned field. It may be a far stranger condition of fields, energies, boundaries, and relations that only approximate our notion of absence. Yet approximation is all we have, and perhaps all we ever will have, which means the deepest truth may remain forever partly translated, never fully itself in our words. That too is unsettling. Reality may not merely exceed our comprehension, it may exceed our grammar. So when you hear that the universe is empty, do not picture a black canvas with a few lights pinned to it. Picture a system in which most of the volume is near vacant, most of the mass is invisible, most of the future is inaccessible, and most of what you will ever know is already receding. Picture a cosmos whose grandest structures are born from tiny fluctuations and sustained by invisible scaffolding. Picture horizons that close as you approach. Picture expansion that does not stop. Picture a future in which even the evidence of origins becomes difficult to recover. And then picture yourself standing inside that, alive for an instant, able to notice the scale of the abyss, even though the abyss does not notice you. That final asymmetry may be the clearest reason the emptiness feels terrifying. It is not merely that the universe is large or dark or cold. It is that it is large enough to make us negligible, dark enough to conceal most of itself, and cold enough to guarantee that the order we cherish cannot last forever without active resistance. The fear is not born from violence, but from proportion. The human scale is too small to anchor reality. We are local. The cosmos is not. We are brief. The cosmos is old beyond emotional comprehension. We are warm by accident. The cosmos is mostly not warm. And yet somehow, from within this disproportion, we build meaning anyway. That may be the most defiant thing a universe can produce. A mind that knows it is temporary and still chooses to understand. Not to dominate the void, not to conquer it, but to face it honestly. To accept that the empty spaces are real, that the invisible majority of matter and energy is real, that the horizons are real, that the future thinning of connection is real, and then, instead of collapsing into despair, to keep looking, to keep asking, to keep measuring the dark with instruments and with thought, because in that refusal to look away, consciousness creates a small enclave of resistance inside a cosmos that otherwise leans toward silence. And if the terror remains, that is because it should. Fear is not always a failure of reason. Sometimes it is reason's most honest physical sensation when confronted with scales it cannot domesticate. The universe is empty for reasons that are scientific, historical, and perhaps still beyond us. Those reasons do not make the emptiness less frightening. They make it legible, and legibility can sharpen dread. For now, the galaxies still shine. The void still separates. The hidden mass still holds the web together. The expansion still carries the distant away. And you are still here, inside the thin, luminous exception, able to witness the architecture of absence. That may be the final paradox. The universe is empty in ways that should make meaning impossible, yet meaning appears anyway. It appears in questions, in models, in observations, in fear, in wonder, in the small determination to understand what does not promise to care. Maybe that is not a contradiction. Maybe that is what reality looks like when it permits consciousness to emerge inside a mostly empty cosmos. Not as proof that the void is gone, but as evidence that something can flare briefly against it. Something like thought, something like you. So if you are left with unease, carry it carefully. It is not a weakness. It is a sign that you have seen past the comforting image and into the actual scale of things. The universe is not a crowded, welcoming expanse. It is a vast structure of scarcity, distance, and hidden forces, held together by laws that seem to favor emptiness over permanence. And that is terrifying not because it denies beauty, but because it makes beauty rare. Rarity sharpens value. Impermanence sharpens presence. The fact that the cosmos is mostly empty does not diminish the stars. It gives them their haunting power. In the end, perhaps that is the only stable meaning we can claim here. That the light matters because the dark is so much larger. That the brief warmth of a star matters because the cold between stars is so extensive. That consciousness matters because it can recognize the emptiness and still choose to illuminate it. The universe may be empty for a reason, but that reason does not have to be our annihilation. It may simply be the grammar of a reality where order is temporary, where life is rare, and where awareness is the most astonishing flare the void has yet permitted. And as long as that flare exists, the emptiness is not complete. It is observed. It is interpreted. It is held, for a moment, inside a mind that knows how large the dark really is. That does not make the void less vast. It only proves that even here, on the edge of everything, something is still looking back into it. And when something looks back, the universe changes. Not in its laws, not in its distances, not in the silent spread of expansion, but in the meaning of its emptiness. What was once just a physical condition becomes an experienced one. The void is no longer only there. It is apprehended, measured against the fragile pulse of consciousness that dares to notice it. That is an almost unbearable fact if you think about it long enough, because the universe does not need observers in order to be empty. It does not become less vacant because we are here, but it becomes more terrible, in a strange and precise way, because we are here to understand the scale of what that vacancy implies. The cosmos can be indifferent, and yet still leave us with the burden of awareness. That burden is what turns astronomy into something close to revelation. You may have noticed how often the word hidden appears whenever modern cosmology approaches its deepest questions. Hidden mass, hidden energy, hidden horizons, hidden beginning, hidden structure beneath visible structure. And perhaps that repetition is not accidental. It reflects a universe that seems to have been assembled in layers of retreat, each deeper layer more difficult to expose than the last. At the surface, there are stars. Beneath them, invisible matter shapes the skeleton. Beneath that, dark energy drives expansion. Beneath that, quantum fields pulse in the apparent vacuum. Beneath that, perhaps, something stranger still. The more you learn, the less the universe appears to be made of what it first looked like it was made of. Reality is not a single visible substance. It is a series of withdrawals. But it gets stranger when you ask whether our minds are even equipped to recognize those withdrawals correctly. Human intuition evolved inside a narrow ecological corridor, where distances were short, objects were solid, and causes were usually nearby. We are disastrously ill-suited to imagine a universe in which emptiness dominates. Gravity sculpts invisible scaffolds across hundreds of millions of light years, and the future is governed by expansion on scales no ancestor could ever have seen. This mismatch matters because it means our first instinct about reality is almost guaranteed to be wrong at cosmic scale. The sky looks close. It is not close. The void feels passive. It is not passive. The universe seems full of things. It is mostly not. The mind reaches for familiarity, but the cosmos remains stubbornly unfamiliar. This is why cosmology often feels like the slow correction of a childhood illusion. First, Earth is not the center. Then the sun is not the center. Then the Milky Way is not the full story. Then galaxies are not the main feature. Then visible matter is not the main feature. Then the expansion is not simply slowing under gravity. Then even the future visibility of the universe becomes compromised. Each step is a correction, but also a diminishment. Not because our importance is denied, but because our intuitions about scale are unfit for the actual architecture of existence. We were never designed to feel comfortable in the presence of infinity. We were designed to survive in the near field. Everything else must be learned painfully, and so the universe emptiness becomes not a background fact, but a lesson in humility. It strips away the idea that what is nearby is representative of what is real. It warns against assuming that density implies significance. It shows that the vast majority of existence may be uninhabited, unlit, and inaccessible. Even the galaxies, when seen from the widest possible perspective, are like glowing traces on a nearly blank parchment. That parchment is not paper, of course. It is space-time, and the writing on it is matter, radiation, fields, horizons, and time itself. But the metaphor survives because it captures the emotional truth. The universe is not crowded with meaning. Meaning must be written into it by transient pockets of order. Yet the more we write, the more we realize that the page is not fixed. The cosmic parchment stretches. The ink of galaxies moves apart. Some lines fade beyond recovery. The margin expands faster than the script can spread. There is something almost literary and almost horrifying in that image, because it suggests a universe in which the story of everything is being physically outpaced by the blankness surrounding it. The words are not erased. They are simply taken too far away from one another to remain legible. This is what accelerated expansion does on the grandest scale. It converts coherence into separation, and separation into invisibility. But it goes deeper than invisibility, because invisibility still implies that something remains available in principle. The universe may not permit even that. There are cosmological horizons beyond which events can never influence us, no matter how long we wait. This is not a temporary barrier. It is a structural one. Some parts of reality are causally amputated from us forever. That means the cosmos is not a single connected object from the point of view of any observer. It is a set of overlapping but incomplete domains, each with its own accessible region and its own excluded darkness. The universe is not one thing seen wholly from one place. It is many partial universes stitched together by limitation. This should unsettle you more than it probably does at first, because it means the universe is an abstraction we use to simplify a reality that is always too large for direct completion. No observer stands outside it. No one can verify the full totality. Every map is local. Every theory is inferred. Every measurement is negotiated with distance and time and delay. That does not weaken science. It deepens it. But it also makes the cosmos feel less like a comprehensible object and more like an asymptote, something approached without ever being captured entirely. The emptiness in this sense is not just physical. It is epistemic. There are things that cannot be gathered into knowledge because the universe has arranged itself against total access. And yet we keep going, because humans are strange that way. We stare at the dark and ask it to become pattern. We point instruments at the sky and expect the invisible to confess itself in gravitational distortions, in spectral shifts, in anisotropies, in relic radiation, in the motion of galaxies and clusters. We extract structure from absence by reading how things move, how light bends, how space expands. In this way, cosmology is a discipline of inference from vacancy. It is the art of learning from what refuses to show its face. There is something noble in that, but also something eerie. The universe's deepest truths are not handed to us directly. They are assembled from absences that behave in reliable ways. But it gets stranger when you consider that absence can be more informative than presence. A missing galaxy where one should exist. A lensing pattern too strong for visible mass alone. A cosmological background slightly warmer or cooler in one direction than another. A horizon beyond which data vanishes. A vacuum state whose tiny value seems impossibly aligned. These absences and tensions are not voids in the ordinary sense. They are fingerprints. The universe leaves them behind like impressions in dust. We reconstruct the unseen from the shape of what it disturbs. That is how dark matter and dark energy remain so haunting. They are not just unknowns. They are the names we give to the invisible sources of very real patterns. The cruelty of this method is that every answer arrives with more shadows attached. Dark matter explains galaxy rotation and structure formation, but then one must ask what it is. Dark energy explains accelerated expansion, but then one must ask why its magnitude is so small yet non-zero. Inflation explains early uniformity and primordial perturbations, but then one must ask what field drove it and why it began and ended as it did. Every successful theory opens the next chamber. The universe is not stingy with clues. It is stingy with closure. That is why the feeling produced by cosmology is so different from the feeling produced by ordinary explanation. Here, to explain is to deepen the mystery without collapsing it. This is not a failure. It is the proper scale of the subject. The cosmos is simply too large and too old and too strange to be reduced without remainder. But the emotional effect is hard to ignore. Each layer of explanation reveals another layer of emptiness, another unobserved component, another horizon, another dependence on an unseen context. The visible world becomes thinner, not because it is less real, but because reality is more distributed than we expected. We are trying to reconstruct an ocean while standing on one small reflective patch of its surface. We measure ripples and infer depths. Sometimes the inferences are breathtakingly accurate. Sometimes they are only the beginning of more profound uncertainty. And then there is the question that sits beneath all the others. If the universe is so vast and so empty, why should there be any observers at all? Not just humans, but observers of any kind. Why should matter arrange itself into systems capable of awareness? Why should the long dispersal of entropy contain within it these rare islands of feedback and reflection? The anthropic principle answers that we observe a life-permitting universe because otherwise no observers would exist. True enough, but this answer can feel like a mirror held up to a mirror. It reflects the conditions of observation without explaining their peculiar abundance of emptiness. It tells us why we are here, but not why the cosmic environment is so deeply structured to allow us only a temporary foothold. Perhaps the most unsettling possibility is that the universe does not care whether it is observed at all, but that the physical conditions permitting observation are themselves the rare consequence of a much broader and less hospitable reality. If there are many possible universes or many regions with different laws, then ours may simply be one of the few in which complexity could survive long enough to generate questions. That does not make our existence less meaningful. It makes it more improbable, and improbability, once felt deeply, takes on a texture almost indistinguishable from dread. You begin to suspect that you are not meant to be here in any intuitive sense. You are here because the cosmos, by sheer lawful rarity, allowed a pattern like you to flicker into being. But it gets stranger when you realize that rarity itself can become a kind of cosmological signature. The conditions that permit atoms, stars, chemistry, and life are not arbitrary from the inside. They feel natural because all surviving observers will inevitably find their home environment natural. Yet from the outside, the values of fundamental constants may appear exquisitely narrow. Too much strong force, and nuclear structure changes. Too little electromagnetic stability and chemistry unravels. Too much expansion, and galaxies never form. Too little, and the universe collapses before structure matures. The range is narrow enough to feel almost surgical. Whether that points to deeper necessity or to chance across a larger landscape, the result is the same. Our universe seems balanced on a threshold that could easily have tipped into permanent emptiness. And that threshold is important because it reveals that emptiness is not just the absence of stars. It is a possible failure mode of reality. A universe with no stable structures, no long-lived stars, no chemistry, no complexity, no memory, that would be emptier in a more absolute sense than our own. The fact that our universe avoided that fate is remarkable, but it is not reassuring in a final way. It means only that reality permits a thin corridor through which ordered existence can pass. Outside that corridor lies a landscape of near total silence. The cosmos we inhabit is less a guaranteed home than a permitted exception. You can feel, perhaps, how this changes your emotional relationship to the night sky. The stars no longer appear as evidence that the universe is full. They appear as rare and costly emissions against an overwhelmingly empty background. Their light has traveled through a vastness that barely interacts with it. Their arrangement is temporary. Their future is finite. Their existence is not the rule but the result of numerous precise conditions. Even a galaxy, grand as it is, becomes a brief condensation in an otherwise sparse regime. The universe is not a container of things. It is an evolving balance between attraction and separation, between structure and dilution, between what gathers and what stretches apart. But it goes deeper, because in that balance there is a hidden asymmetry. Separation wins in the long run, not because gravity loses its power locally, but because expansion works across scales and entropy works through time. Gravity can create islands, but expansion enlarges the ocean between them. Entropy can preserve local order, but only by spending gradients that cannot be restored for free. The cosmos therefore has a directional bias, and that bias is toward thinning. This is why the future feels so haunting in cosmology. It is not unknown merely because it has not happened yet. It is known in outline, and the outline is vacancy. There is something almost unbearable about a future that can be described in general terms but not emotionally escaped. You can know, intellectually, that stars will die, that matter will become rarer, that horizons will isolate structures, that black holes will eventually evaporate, that the heat death scenario or some analog of it may await the universe after unimaginably long durations. Knowledge does not stop the effect. Instead, it sharpens it. You are left to inhabit a present that is beautiful precisely because it is non-final. Every moment of warmth, every act of connection, every pulse of awareness is an interval inside a much larger tendency that does not favor permanence. The universe is not refusing to let us be. It is simply not built to keep us. And that is perhaps the point where philosophy and cosmology converge most sharply, because the scientific story about expansion, entropy, and hidden structure becomes, when felt deeply enough, an existential statement. Things are not naturally preserved. They are maintained against probability. Meaning is not poured into the universe from outside. It is generated inside rare regions of order, then carried for a while until conditions fail. The emptiness, then, is not an insult to significance. It is the backdrop against which significance becomes possible. Without vacancy, there would be no separation. Without separation, no complexity. Without complexity, no thought. Without thought, no one to notice the void. The universe may be empty for reasons that appear terrifying, but those reasons are also the reasons any witness can exist at all. This is where the experience becomes almost sacred in the old sense of the word, set apart, charged, surrounded by forces that exceed ordinary handling. To look into the emptiness of the cosmos is to stand inside a mystery that is not abstract but physical, not symbolic but measurable, not distant but already shaping your future. The dark between galaxies is real, the hidden mass is real, the acceleration is real, the eventual isolation of structures is real, the limits of observation are real, and because they are real, they are part of the conditions under which your own existence has been permitted to arise. That may not comfort you, it may even make you colder, but it is honest. So perhaps the right response is not to seek a final answer that would domesticate the emptiness, but to accept the unfinishedness of the cosmos as part of its character. The universe may never be fully translated into intuition. It may remain partly hidden, partly inaccessible, partly silent, and yet within that silence, rare patterns ignite, galaxies gather, stars burn, planets cool, life emerges, minds awaken, questions form, doubt sharpens, awe deepens into unease, and unease deepens into something like understanding. You stand at the edge of what can be known and realize that the edge is not an error. It is built in. It is one of the ways the universe stays true to itself. In the end, the emptiness is terrifying because it is not empty of law. It is empty because law itself favors thinness, distance, and impermanence on the largest scales. The void is not a dead zone. It is the default condition from which islands of relation temporarily arise. The universe does not owe us fullness. It owes us nothing, and yet it gives enough structure for wonder to exist. That contradiction is the heart of the dread. We are conscious in a cosmos that mostly does not need consciousness, and we are able to know enough about it to realize how small our refuge truly is. That knowledge is not a wound in truth. It is truth itself, sharp and bright and cold. So when you next look up, remember, the universe is not empty because nothing happened. It is empty because everything had to happen inside an architecture of absence. The stars are exceptions. The galaxies are exceptions. The elements of your body are exceptions. Your thoughts are exceptions. The light is an exception. And if exceptions can last only so long before the larger pattern resumes, then perhaps the greatest mystery is not that the universe is empty, but that for a moment, in one tiny corner of its vast silence, it became aware of the emptiness and called it by name. And in that act of naming, of witnessing, of embodying awareness within an overwhelmingly empty cosmos, there lies the final, fragile thread of meaning. The universe may be indifferent, vast beyond comprehension and overwhelmingly empty, but it is also the stage for consciousness, a rare, precious flare that illuminates the darkness, if only briefly. That light, your awareness, is not simply a byproduct of cosmic happenstance. It is the place where emptiness meets significance. So let this be the closing thought. The cosmos does not promise comfort or permanence. It offers instead a story of rare exception amid profound absence, of fleeting presence against relentless expansion, of beauty forged on the edges of silence. Your existence, this very moment of reflection, is the universe's way of knowing itself, not in fullness but through the delicate, dazzling defiance of emptiness. Carry that awareness with you, holding both the awe and the unease, as you turn your eyes again to the night sky. Remember that each star you see is a luminous island in a vast ocean of nothingness, and yet from that nothingness arises the possibility of meaning, however momentary. The universe is empty, yes, but it is in that emptiness that your light shines all the more brightly. Thank you for joining this journey beyond the universe. May your wonder persist, your questions deepen, and your courage to face the vast silence inspire others to look up and think, to feel small and yet undeniably connected within this great expanse. Because in the end, it is not the fullness of the cosmos alone that amazes, but the luminous heart of awareness beating fiercely inside its great emptiness.